Hello, and welcome to today's story. And today's story is about David and Goliath. It was a lovely sunny day as David sat on the hillside looking after his father's sheep, playing his harp and talking with God. He needed to keep alert because there were wild animals that tried to attack the sheep. In the past, he had even protected the sheep from lions and bears. The messenger came to David saying that his father wanted to see him. When he came down from the hills, he found his father waiting for him. "Can you take this food to your brothers in the army?" he asked. David left the sheep with one of the other shepherds and made his way to Elah. The Israelite army was on top of a hill looking across the valley to Sokoh, where the Philistine army was gathered. When David reached the army, he had left the food he had brought with the men looking after the supplies and went to find his brothers. While he was talking to his brothers, a man carrying a huge shield came from between the ranks of the Philistine army. He was followed by the Philistine champion Goliath. Goliath was over 3 meters tall and wore a special armour over his body and legs. He carried a big spear and a javelin. He was even bigger than Saul, the Israelite king, who was the head and shoulders taller than anyone else in Israel. Saul, as a king and the biggest Israelite, should have been the one to fight Goliath, but he was afraid, and instead he offered a reward to the one who would kill the Philistine champion. Then Goliath shouted his challenge across the valley towards the Israelites. He had done this for the last 40 days, each morning and evening. "Why have you come out to challenge us to battle? I am not a Philistine, and you, servants of Saul, choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to kill me, we will become your subjects and serve you. If I should kill your champion, then all the Israelites will serve us. This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." All the Israelites were frightened and didn't know what to do. David overheard the men talking. "I don't know what will happen. There is no one brave enough to fight Goliath. The reward that the king is offering of his daughter's hand in marriage and his family's exemption from taxes isn't enough to make anyone volunteer." David wanted to make sure that this was an accurate offer, so he then asked other soldiers what would be given to the person who killed Goliath. Every person he spoke to confirmed what had been said. King Saul got to hear of David's interest and sent for him. When David saw Saul, he said, "Don't worry, I, your servant, will go and fight Goliath." But when Saul saw how young and small David was, he was disappointed. "You can't fight Goliath. He is a trained soldier, and you are only a boy." David described to Saul how, with God's help, he had protected the sheep from bears and lions, and that if he were to fight Goliath on behalf of the army of the living God, God would not let him be beaten. Saul agreed and said, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul helped David to dress in his own armour, because David had none of his own, but it was too big and heavy. David could barely walk in it. "I cannot fight in this," he said. So he went out to face Goliath, carrying only his shepherd's staff and a sling. As he crossed the stream, he picked up 5 stones and slipped them into his pouch. Goliath looked at David and saw that he was only a boy and didn't even own a sword. He said, "Do you think I am a dog that can be scared away with sticks?" Then he cursed David by his gods. David stood his ground and answered back in a strong voice, "You come against me with sword, spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel. This day the Lord will be with me, and I will chop off your head." then the whole world would know that there is a God in Israel. Goliath started towards David with his big, slow, deliberate strides. David ran forwards, putting a stone in his sling. As he went, he swung the sling and let the stone fly. It hit Goliath on the forehead, and the stone went right into his head. Goliath staggered and fell. David ran to where Goliath lay. As he had no sword of his own, he took Goliath's sword and used it to chop off his head. When the Philistines saw Goliath had been killed, they turned and ran. The Israelite army followed them, fighting all the way to the Philistine towns of Ekron and Gath. David returned to Bethlehem, still carrying Goliath's head, and was taken to Saul, who gave him the rewards that he had promised. The end.